The Province of Antioch has been secured, its defenses bolstered under our leadership. The time has come to mount an offensive against the nearby Hive cluster. Judicator Aldaris joins us along with our comrade Praetor Phoenix. Aldaris praises our recent victory and says that we've even restored some of his previously shaken faith. Tassadar's recent desertion has wounded his trust in the Templar caste, and it will take many victories to restore it.
Entaro Adun, Executor. Your defense of Antioch has restored my faith in the Templar caste.
But just as Aldaris begins lecturing us, who better to interrupt than our old mentor and Gigachad himself, Tassadar.
I admit that Tassadar's desertion had shaken my faith.
Indeed, Aldaris.
He chides Aldaris for his lack of faith in his own people, shutting Aldaris down before he can reply further.
I would hope that the Judicator would put more faith in their Templar brethren.
Tassadar, where have you been?
Be silent, Judicator!
Tassadar begins revealing the truth of his absence, explaining that after the Zerg left Tarsonis, he followed his instincts to investigate their whereabouts. In doing so, he was summoned to Char via an unknown psionic communication. Of course, we know this was actually Kerrigan reaching out to Raynor in Minsk while she was in her cocoon.
There is no time to waste, and I have much to tell you. As you know, the Zerg vanished after the fall of the Terran world of Tarsonis, and though the Conclave bid me return home, I was compelled to remain. A powerful psionic call drew my attention to a remote barren world named Char.
Upon arriving on the infested world, he encountered none other than the exiles of the Templar caste, the Dark Templar.
Apparently the call was answered by others as well, for upon Char, I encountered those who were once our brethren, the Dark Templar.
Consorting with the Fallen Ones is heresy!
Enough!
Tassadar continues, ignoring Aldaris' shrill whining, explaining that if a Cerebrate is slain, then the brood they control falls apart. No longer able to function without the center of its hive mind, by removing the beast's head, the rest of the body will die. And so our focus should be on destroying the Zerg Cerebrates.
Hear me, Executor, for I have learned much from the Dark Templar Prelate, Zeratul. The Overmind controls its minions through agents called Cerebrates. Strike down the Cerebrates, and the swarms will surely fall.
Executor, Tassadar may be right. If you can keep the Zerg occupied, my force may be able to penetrate their perimeter and slay the abomination.
Phoenix sees the wisdom in this plan of attack and volunteers to move his forces in for a pincer attack, close in on the Cerebrate from behind, while we distract the Zerg forces on the main front. Aldaris, however, still does not trust Tassadar. Suspicious that he has consorted with the reviled Dark Templar, and demands that Tassadar return to Ire to face judgment for his transgressions.
I pray we can trust you, Tassadar. Already I can sense the taint of the Fallen One's influence on your mind. You must return to Ire at once.
My concern is for the safety of Ire, not the judgments of the Conclave. I will return when the time is right.
Tassadar disregards this request like an elephant disregarding an ant, for his focus is ironclad, winning this war and sparing his people from the horrors of the Zerg. His judgment by the Conclave will have to wait. Our forces during this mission begin deployed on some high ground with two separate choke points accessing our base, and we have little more than 15 minutes to prepare our defense while Phoenix's forces get into position. We assess our forces without delay, and while our analysis shows that we have no new units, we have been granted a new defensive structure, the shield battery. This arachnoid building deploys its energy reserves to refill the plasma shields of any nearby units. A useful tool for keeping our defenses from being overrun from the Zerg, while still keeping them in the fight. The downside, however, is that the shield battery's recharge time is a bit long, so its benefits must be used wisely. The battle commences, and without hesitation, the Zerg begin sending scouting parties to probe our base and try to punch holes in our defenses.
Awaiting instructions. My life for ire.
Their attempts are meager and easily routed, but we know that besieging their fortifications will take a mighty force. Our work is cut out for us, and we must assemble a decisive force before Phoenix arrives. Probing south, we find a resource-rich plateau with only one choke point needing to be defended. With haste at our heels, we set up our base there, along with an armament of photon cannons for its protection. Once Phoenix arrives to flank the Zerg base, our army is ready for action.
I long for combat. We are in position. I await your orders.
Phoenix has even graced us with a few Reavers to bolster our forces. These hulking cybernetic bug boys are mobile factories, capable of unleashing skittering hordes of explosive domination. And although their kamikaze scarabs cost resources to produce, they're well worth the cost for the ability to eradicate enemy forces from well outside their own range. Armed and ready, we commence our pincer offensive.
What now calls? Have engaged the enemy. House. Executor, as you will. I long for combat.
Our forces crash into their sunken colonies like a raging typhoon, with Hydralisks, Zerglings, and Mutalisks spilling forth after we rattle the Zerg hive. Phoenix's forces charge into the exposed Zerg base from the north, utilizing his Reavers to lay waste to their tech structures from afar.
I long for combat. Have engaged the enemy. House. Executor, immediately. Executor, for hire, immediately. For hire. Make use of me. What now calls? I am needed. The warriors have engaged the enemy.
After reducing the Zerg hive to a pulpy, flesh-covered soup, we see that there's one other small choke point in the back of the base, heavily laden with more sunken colonies. Eradicating the colonies leads us through the narrow pass to find our prize, the Cerebrate. The Balrog brood, which we have been doing battle with this mission, is in service of the Cerebrate known as Gorn. Of course, we would never learn whatever the filth calls itself, as Phoenix brutally strikes down the creature in the name of ire without hesitation. Who better to slay the enemy commander than our mightiest warrior? All that's left now is to wait for Judicator Aldaris' orders and the will of the Conclave, a time during which Phoenix takes it upon himself to behold the Brood's promised destruction after the Cerebrits' defeat.
I will remain behind and observe the effects of our attack. Return to the Citadel. I shall notify you when the Brood becomes erratic.
We pray and hope that Adun be with us, and that the faith we have placed in Tassadar will not lead us to ruin. The Province of Antioch has been secured. That's too much brevity. Probing south, we find a resource-rich plateau. Probing south, we find a resource-rich plateau. Probing south, we find a water. I just recorded damn near the whole episode and found out that my mic was muted. Anyway, starting over.